All right. Good morning, everyone. It's still morning, technically, for the next couple minutes, but we're starting a little bit early because we have been able to get Olga Cherevko, the spokesperson for the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, who's in Gaza, to speak to you. So she'll start off this briefing, and then after that, I'll do the spokesperson's briefing, and then we'll get to our noon briefing guest, who's Roberto Benes from, who will be speaking to us from Haiti. So first, as you can see on the screen, we have Olga Cherevko. Olga, welcome to the briefing. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Farhan. Can you hear me?
Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you very much for being here. I'm here today to tell you that after so much horror and suffering, there is finally relief at last. Since the ceasefire took effect, the United Nations and our humanitarian partners have moved swiftly to scale up the delivery of humanitarian assistance across Gaza. After months of devastation and suffering, the bombs have stopped falling, and with that silence came an opportunity and a responsibility to act. The ceasefire has allowed those who have been suffering throughout the 2 years of war, Palestinian and Israeli families, a breath of fresh air, a light of hope after many dark months. And yesterday we saw some of these families finally reunite with their loved ones, released hostages and prisoners. We have wasted no time. Our scale-up plan for the first 60 days, tested and proven to work, is in full motion. In the past 3 days, thousands of tons of humanitarian aid and other supplies have entered Gaza, including cooking gas, which entered on Sunday for the first time in over 7 months. We're offloading and collecting critical supplies and accessing areas which we weren't able to reach for months. With 190,000 metric tons of assistance in our cleared pipeline, it's all hands on deck. With the commercial sector bolstering the response, with the commercial sector bolstering the response and the bilateral assistance with us, we are working to restore access to clean water and providing bread and hot meals. Our medical teams are resupplying hospitals and field clinics that have been running on empty. We're delivering fuel to power bakeries, desalination plants, and hospitals again. We're repairing roads and checking them for explosive risks and helping displaced families prepare for the winter months. There is a bombed-out building in Gaza City where somebody painted a beautiful mural on one of the collapsed walls. The mural says, Bukra Akhla, which means tomorrow is better. It is the hope envisaged in the blue sky and the sun in the mural that has nurtured people's resolve to see that better tomorrow through. They're now returning to places where their homes once stood, opening shops and discussing future plans for the first time in months. Yesterday, a family living in a tent surrounded by rubble in Gaza City invited me for lunch of some stewed tomatoes and peppers. It was their first time having fresh vegetables in months. Every truck, every piece of bread, every box of medicine that crosses into Gaza carries with it a message of hope for a better tomorrow. The needs, of course, remain immense. The ceasefire has ended the fighting, but it hasn't ended the crisis. Displacement, destroyed infrastructure, lawlessness, damaged roads, unexploded ordnance, and the collapse of basic services are just some of the challenges. Scaling up response is not just about logistics and more trucks. It's about restoring humanity and dignity to a shattered population. We're working around the clock with all parties to ensure predictable, safe, and sustained access. But let me be clear, humanitarian aid alone will not be a substitute for peace. The ceasefire must hold. It must become the basis for a broader political effort that brings the end of cycles of violence and despair. The ceasefire has opened the door to a future in which children can go to school safely. Hospitals are places of healing and not suffering, and aid convoys are ultimately replaced by commerce and opportunity. The road is long, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step, and we will be there with the people every step of the way. What is most important now, that with this new chapter, is that the world doesn't turn the page while the healing has just begun. Thank you.
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. A couple of quick follow-ups. Are there any specific numbers on how many tons or how many trucks have been able to get in since the ceasefire? Secondly, what items is Israel still blocking from getting into Gaza? And thirdly, we've been hearing that there's fighting between some Hamas members who've taken over security and some clans or gangs. Is that impacting humanitarian work? Thank you.
Thank you, Edie. Farhan, do you want me to take one by one? Or?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thanks, Edie. So on the trucks, we were informed by the Israeli authorities that on Sunday, 817 trucks have entered. In terms of your second question, I think what we need to look at is on Sunday, I actually spent that Sunday at Kerem Shalom. And to be honest with you, I was sitting there for the entire day and watching the trucks enter and the items entering and all these items that we have been needing for so long. I have seen so many of them finally come in, and including cooking gas that I mentioned. This is going to make a massive difference in people's lives, because we have seen people collecting garbage, kids collecting garbage to burn, to cook with. And this is a huge breakthrough. I think this will be a very long journey. We need to remain on course. We have to, of course, the importance of the ceasefire holding is very, very critical, and the importance that the parties continue, that they adhere to the parameters agreed in the ceasefire is very, very important. There is, as I mentioned, there are many challenges that remain. These challenges include the breakdown of public safety, of public order, of lawlessness. And so this is something that we will need to deal with, of course, and we will face it on a daily basis. Of course, the path that we're following, it will take time, and it needs to progress to the point where law and order is restored, and we are able to get guarantees that the safety of workers and the civilians around us that we're trying to serve.
Thanks. Deshi?
Hi, Olga. Shidoju with China Central Television. Sort of follow up with Edie's question. A couple questions. First, you said you saw those humanitarian aids entering Gaza. We know that we used to have this discussion of the border crossing. You just get the trucks inside Gaza, offloading and unloading, and then use the trucks inside Gaza to deliver the humanitarian aids. Is that still the case? Have you been able to pick up those things in the border crossing to deliver to people? It's not really in the pipeline, but how many have you been, delivered to people? And secondly, have you experienced any lootings in the past 3 days? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we did. We have been able to deliver, and we have been delivering to the people daily. And of course, with the scale up, we're hoping to address people's needs increasingly better. The way it works, basically, at the crossing, the empty trucks come and then they get loaded and then they come back out and then they get delivered to the different warehouses and other points to reach the people. On your question of looting, it relates to this the same issue of breakdown of law and order that we have seen. And we have seen a reduction, even though it has been a serious issue in the past months. We have seen over time a reduction, especially in the recent days. And of course, the idea is that with the increased entry of supplies into Gaza, that the looting will stop. And this is what we would like to see.
So just to be confirmed, there are still lootings for the past few days?
Well, I don't think this is something that we can expect to change overnight again. And this is something just like we cannot expect Gaza to turn from rubble into built up city. It will take time. So yes, it's still an issue.
Amelie?
Thank you, Olga. Amélie Bottelier from AFP News Agency. You mentioned an unexploded ordnance. Do you have any kind of idea of what kind of scale we're talking about this unexploded ordnance? And what kind of precaution are the humanitarian, the NGOs, and the people going through the rubble putting in place to avoid all this to explode?
Thank you for the question. So this is one of the areas that we're focusing on, and the same thing happened during the last ceasefire, where we ramped up the attention to this issue. Basically, we have, of course, our teams on the ground who do assessments, and they assess the various roads, the locations, and they go to make sure that the ordinance is clearly marked, and that there are also awareness for the communities to make sure that they know not to touch them and not to be around them, and so forth. And it's in terms of scale, I think we will find that out as we go along. I mean, we do find shells and other ordnance regularly in our missions, but I think we will realize the full scale of it once we have done the assessments of all the areas that we need to assess.
I know there's a lot of questions, but we can only take maybe two more. So we'll ask two more people and wrap it up. Islam and then Michelle.
Thank you. My name is Islam from Anadolu Agency. I just would like to ask, do you enter humanitarian aids only certain areas in Gaza, such as the first phase where Israeli army withdraw, or you enter the humanitarian aids across the Gaza? My second question is, are there still Palestinians, Gazans, in the Israeli military controlled area? If so, do you deliver also to those people?
So we deliver assistance wherever people are. With the ceasefire, as I mentioned, there are various areas that we weren't able to access before that we are accessing now. We go wherever people remain. And in terms of the different areas where there's a different coordination modality for us to reach the people, we use that modality. So it just depends on the area. But we're delivering assistance and services wherever people are.
Okay, and we have time for one last question, and that's from Michelle Nichols online. And we'll try to have another humanitarian briefing as soon as we can, but our guest has to leave soon. So Michelle, and then we'll let Olga go.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the briefing, Olga. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Just a couple of quick questions. First of all, how many crossings are open and which ones? And you mentioned how many trucks had entered on Sunday. Has there been any aid that's entered Gaza since Sunday? And then Israeli officials have said that the ramp up or the scale up of aid would be delayed or reduced because Hamas has not handed over the bodies of some hostages. Has COGAT notified the UN of any delay or reduction in the number of trucks it's going to allow into Gaza?
Thank you. So I'll start with your last question first. We have received this communication from the Israeli authorities, and of course we continue to encourage the parties to adhere to the agreements that have been set out in the ceasefire parameters, and we certainly very much hope that the bodies of the hostages are handed over and that the ceasefire continues to be implemented. In terms of the crossings, they are, we can confirm that today they were closed, but we continue to pick up because it's not every day that when things come in, everything is collected immediately. So we continue to collect what is there, and we will continue to do so, and then bring in more.
And that notification spelled out exactly how many trucks they would allow to enter from tomorrow?
So the notification is the information that we have seen, that you have seen in the reports.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Olga. I know that you only had a small amount of time, so thank you very much for agreeing to come and speak to us. Good luck with your work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay. And now, in a short while, you will hear from our regularly scheduled guest, Roberto Benes, UNICEF's Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean. He will join us from Haiti to brief on the situation there. And then tomorrow, we will be joined by Jean-Martin Bauer, WFP's Director of Food Security and Nutrition Analysis, who will provide an overview of WFP's report entitled A Lifeline at Risk. And we will also be joined by Ross Smith, WFP's Director of Emergency Preparedness and Response, who will focus on the 6 countries that are at most critical risk this year as a result of funding cuts. Both of our guests tomorrow will join the briefing virtually. The Secretary General is now on his way back to New York after he attended the Sharm el-Sheikh Summit for ending the war in Gaza. During the conference, the Secretary General had conversations with a number of key interlocutors regarding the UN increasing its humanitarian efforts in Gaza. And on that, turning to the situation in the Gaza Strip, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that since the ceasefire plan came into effect, the UN and our humanitarian partners have been able to move more freely across parts of Gaza from which Israeli forces have withdrawn without coordination with Israeli authorities. This improved access has allowed partners to scale up the response to the most urgent needs. Yesterday, the World Health Organization said that within 24 hours of the ceasefire, an emergency medical team was deployed to Al-Ali Hospital in Gaza City, and 8 trucks carrying medical supplies entered the Strip, including insulin, lab supplies, and essential medicine. WHO teams also reached the European Gaza Hospital in Khan Yunis to retrieve cancer and other life-saving medications, as well as intensive care unit equipment, including incubators, ventilators, and patient monitors, and transferred them to Nasser Hospital, also in Khan Yunis. The UN and our humanitarian partners have also installed a solar panel for a desalination unit in Deir el-Bala, as well as new telecommunications hardware to improve connectivity for affected people and humanitarian operations. Efforts to clear debris from roads, particularly those leading to crossing points, are also underway. Since yesterday, the Israeli authorities facilitated 4 UN-led missions to collect medical, health, and shelter supplies from the Kerem Shalom and Kisufim crossings. The UN and our partners are also assessing people's needs in areas that had previously been accessible so we can adjust our response efforts. Today, an OCHA team visited one of these areas, the Al-Katiba neighborhood in Khan Yunis. They reported extensive destruction with large amounts of rubble visible throughout. Our partners have begun clearing main roads to facilitate movement and humanitarian access within the area. The UN and our partners will continue scaling up operations under our 60-day response plan to reach as many people as possible with life-saving assistance. Much more can be done, and for this to happen, as we've said, we need more crossings to open, as well as the sustained entry of fuel and cooking gas, security guarantees for convoys, basic infrastructure to be restored, protection of humanitarian workers, the facilitation of NGO access, including through ensuring they are not deregistered, and the rapid injection of funding to support humanitarian operations. And we have an update from our colleagues at the United Nations Mine Action Service on the severe threat from unexploded ordnance in Gaza. As hundreds of thousands of displaced people and humanitarian workers move through affected areas following the ceasefire, the risk of encountering these deadly remnants of war is high. UNMAS and its partners are working tirelessly to protect communities and stand ready to facilitate humanitarian scale-up and mitigate explosive ordnance risks. Since October 2023, UNMAS has identified more than 550 explosive ordnance items in areas they have been able to access, though the full extent of contamination in Gaza is still unknown. Partners are also delivering risk education for communities since 2023, especially children, and training humanitarian and construction workers to operate safely. Their work is critical to saving lives and enabling aid to reach those in need. Additionally, explosive ordnance disposal officers evaluate debris along roads and within damaged buildings to determine whether areas are safe to clear. Their guidance and technical expertise are crucial for mitigating explosive ordnance risks during these high-risk operations. On the humanitarian front, our colleagues from OCHA warned that with fewer than 3 months left in the year, our appeal to meet global humanitarian needs in 2025 is less than a quarter funded. As of the end of September, just 21%, or nearly $9.6 billion, of the more than $45.3 billion needed to support life-saving action around the world this year has been received. This is a staggering decrease of over 40% compared to the same time last year. OCHA stresses that these funding gaps are having devastating consequences for millions, leaving people without health care, families without food, and children without education. In Afghanistan, more than 420 health facilities have closed this year, forcing 3 million people to go without critical care. In Somalia, food aid had to be slashed, meaning that only 350,000 people will receive support in November, compared to 1.1 million people in August. And in Bangladesh, 500,000 Rohingya refugee children have lost access to education in Cox's Bazar. We and our partners are doing all we can to reach as many vulnerable people as possible with the limited funding available. You'll recall that in June, OCHA launched a hyper-prioritized global appeal within this year's broader global humanitarian overview, a plan that aims to meet the most urgent needs of 114 million people. OCHA also calls on donors to step up their investment in humanitarian aid. At a time when global needs are immense, more support is critical to saving lives. Moving to Ukraine, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that a UN humanitarian convoy came under attack today in the Kherson region while delivering medicine, hygiene items, and shelter materials to the frontline town of Belozerka. The town, heavily impacted by the war, had not received assistance for months. The interagency convoy of 4 humanitarian trucks, clearly marked and led by OCHA, was hit by drones while offloading supplies, with 2 WFP trucks set on fire. Luckily, no humanitarian workers were injured. The resident and humanitarian coordinator for Ukraine, Matej Shmale, condemned the attack by the Russian Federation Armed Forces, stressing that such attacks are a gross violation of international humanitarian law. Meanwhile, authorities report that hostilities yesterday killed 5 civilians and injured nearly 30 others nationwide. The heaviest impact was recorded in Kharkiv, Donetsk, and Kherson regions, where homes, a hospital, and a church were damaged. Evacuations of children from frontline areas continue, with more than 200 people, including 40 children, having been moved yesterday. According to the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission, civilian casualties rose by more than 30% in 2025 compared with last year. In September alone, 214 civilians were killed and 916 injured, mostly near the front lines in the Donetsk and Kherson regions. Short-range drones caused nearly a third of all casualties, while long-range missiles and drone strikes accounted for another 30%. Attacks on energy infrastructure increased by 15% month on month, including 12 incidents in the Kherson region. Moving to the situation in southern Lebanon, the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon continues to monitor and report violations of Resolution 1701 in its area of operations. Peacekeepers yesterday found an unauthorized weapons cache in Sector East, including a tunnel and bunker with a rocket launcher, rockets, and fuses. Meanwhile, UNIFIL continues to report Israeli Defense Force military presence and activities in the area of operations. Yesterday, the peacekeepers observed an Israeli battle tank firing heavy machine gun bursts and smoke shells across the blue line in the Markaba area in Sector East. Also, since yesterday, UNIFIL's Maritime Task Force has been conducting a training exercise with Lebanese Navy cadets who will remain aboard a Maritime Task Force vessel until the end of the week, enhancing their skills in carrying out maritime operations. The Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, is in Brasilia, Brazil, to attend the preparatory ministerial meeting for the 30th session of the Conference of the Parties, or COP30. In her opening remarks, the Deputy Secretary General acknowledged the potential of nationally determined contributions as engines of climate-smart development and growth, but warned that current commitments remain insufficient to keep global warming below the 1.5-degree threshold. Looking ahead to COP30, she emphasized that climate adaptation must be central to the outcome, including support for national plans, prioritization of public finance for adaptation, particularly for least developed countries and small island developing states, and scaling up innovative solutions. She underscored that climate action must become the defining driver of sustainable development in this decade. At pre-COP, the Deputy Secretary General will meet with heads of delegation from negotiating parties and senior Brazilian government officials. Discussions will focus on nationally determined contributions, preparations for COP30, and strengthening cooperation between countries and the United Nations on climate action. She is expected to return to New York tomorrow. Hannah Tete, the Secretary General's Special Representative for Libya, briefed the Security Council this morning on the UN-facilitated